So
we do have a little bit of an echo, or maybe I'm just hearing it.
It's because of me, because Sarah and I are in the same room, both on headsets. So as soon as I hand you, as soon as we're about to get going, I'm going to go on mute, and we won't get that anymore.
Okay, perfect.
So, so we're recording right now, but don't worry, this part will be clipped before we actually get to the people.
Okay.
And now I'm going to transfer over the command to you, Terri, just like we did yesterday. Just make sure you don't start it. All right, so I am going to make you the presenter. Yes, you get control, and there we go.
Show my screen.
Yep, now we can see your screen.
I think we're good. Can you guys see me?
I sure can.
Yep.
Great. So we are all set and ready to go. And now we're just going to wait for 3 minutes.
Wonderful.
Whoa, way to slam it.
I'm getting over a cold, so I had to tell Dana I have to run and get my tissues because I'm not going to make it.
I didn't know what that hand signal was. I thought you were like, I need to go eat.
No. I've had enough.
By the way, Terri, before we get started, I do want to say thank you so much for getting me all your materials on time and ahead of schedule even, and all of that. Is really good to work with you. How many times
I was going to say, you're going to...
I have to really hound people, and it's really difficult.
Oh, well, I'm happy to oblige. Thank you.
So, all right, we got 2 minutes. I hate these last couple of minutes. That's when my nerves start getting me.
It's fine.
Even though I'm not the one talking, I just I don't know, I have nightmares about technical problems, I guess.
No need. We're all among friends here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, worst possible case scenario is, you know, you have to reschedule the webinar. So, all right, we got 1 minute left. I am going to go on mute in just a second. Terri, real quickly, after the webinar, after I end it, it's going to automatically shut off this call. So you can I can either call you afterwards, or we can exchange emails, whatever you prefer, or nothing, whatever. So whatever you'd like.
Yeah, I was having a little trouble hearing that last part, but I think emails will probably work.
Okay.
So.
I'll email you afterwards. Okay, here we go. I'm going to go on mute, and we're going to get started.
Wonderful. Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Leveraging Independent Consultants, a Solution for the Talent War with Terri Gallagher of Gallagher & Consultants. We're just going to wait a little bit for everybody to arrive, and as we do that, I'll take you through a little bit of housekeeping and everything you need to know while we're getting set up here and waiting for our last-minute arrivals. So we'll go on to the next slide, and I can introduce myself. Hey, there's me in the bright pink sweater. My name's Sarah Conde, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. A quick background on me, I've been with MBO for about 7 years, and during that time I've managed over 250 independent consultants, dozens of Fortune 100 client accounts, managed some teams of business managers and our client enrollment managers. Basically, I've worked with a lot of independent consultants, and now in my role as director of our client services team, I get to manage our advisors who speak with independent consultants who are curious about our services and want to learn more about if there might be a right fit, and we do consultations with them. So we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll just tell you a little bit quickly about MBO, what we do. Our mission statement is to make it easy for independent consultants and their clients to work together. We're the high-level overview. We're a complete, all-inclusive business operation system, outsourced business operations for independent consultants. And basically what that means is we take care of all the administrative items that are typically outsourced to several different vendors, like liability coverage, invoicing, tax withholding, access to benefits, expense processing, etc. And we package them all up with some best-in-class vendors and just have it a turnkey solution for those who are ready to work independently and make the leap. Okay, so now for some housekeeping on our webinar setup. You can see the controls listed here. We'll be taking questions throughout that will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Any questions that we do not get to, we'll answer them via email or after the presentation. And just to be clear, everybody asks us this, and people are still going to ask it, but just want to be crystal clear that we will be emailing the slide deck and a recorded copy of the entire webinar to all registrants within the next week. So you will get a copy of this. And we're going to be live tweeting as you watch this presentation under the hashtag MBOWeb. So submit your questions and comments. We'd certainly love to interact with you. And now on to business. It really is my sincere pleasure to introduce you to today's presenter, Terri Gallagher. Terri's president and CEO of Gallagher & Consultants, and they provide custom contingent labor strategies and solutions for their clients. She brings over 20 years of experience in global and domestic temp workforce strategies and technologies. And before starting her own company, she'd worked as a senior in executive roles at NextSource, Tapfin, Adecco, Taleo, Disney. So needless to say, she has some great insight to share with us. She knows what she's talking about, and she knows what clients look for in IC. So we'd love to just, learn from her. And with that, I'll hand it off to our experts.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Sarah. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening for those of you on the phone, depending on where you're calling in from. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the changes in the workforce over the past couple of decades and the specific opportunities that's creating for independent consultants, otherwise known as ICs, and the organizations that hire them. And that's why it's good basic practice, and it's a good way to get access to the high level of talent that organizations are looking for. So this is something that's beneficial to organizations and the ICs. I also want to say a big thank you to every single IC on the phone, because you really helped build our company. My logo was designed by a crowdsourcing site. My website was designed by an independent consultant, as is the lawyer, the CPA, all of the people that support my company. So I want to thank you. I believe in everything that you're doing. I think you're a viable option and contributing to our company's growth and contributing to our workforce. So to better understand the opportunities for independent consultants, it's really good to understand how far you've come to see where you're headed. So when we look at the early 1990s, it was all about mitigating risk. So IC workers were used sparingly. A lot of organizations had very rigorous restrictions, much to the irritation of some of the managers who wanted to work with them. The IRS was looking for employers who were misclassifying these employees. So there was a lot of fear and a lot of concern around using independent consultants. This started changing right around 2007, 2009. Of course, all of us remember and felt the Great Recession. It had a big impact on the workforce, and while 8.8 million jobs were lost, there are still 2.5 million jobs going unfilled in the new knowledge economy. And we're going to talk a little bit later about that and the opportunities that presents for the ICs. So in 2010, we really start to see some changes. Workers are no longer feeling the corporate environment is safe and stable. And you really see the emergence of the gig economy, which is a general term. I think you've all heard it's used for the use of independent consultants, on-demand workers, etc. But really what it means is workers want to create their own job security. So you see a trend of workers going out on their own, making sure that they've got marketable skills and creating their own stability and basically their own safe space to work within. Well, 2011, we really start to see changes. You see structural shifts in the economy. You see cheaper, better, more accessible technologies to connect you, the ICs on the phone, to the companies also on the phone that want to hire you. So we're going to talk a little bit later about that and why that's actually a really good thing. So as a result, we have a growing IC population, and it's expected to be at 40 million by 2019, which is substantial growth from today's numbers. And if you think about it, just to kind of put that in perspective, the overall growth for the U.S. labor force is 1.1%. The growth for ICs is 11 times higher than that number. So then the burning question is why? Why is there such a growing IC population? Well, the control over the kind of work that they do, flexibility to determine when and where they work, and the autonomy to work in the way that they believe is best is very attractive. So now enter ICs in high demand. And I personally believe that ICs are the wave of the future, and they're going to be an integral part of our workforce, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But ICs have gone from being employed sparingly and with caution to being in high demand, right? So some of the drivers for that, as we stated, the escalation of the knowledge economy, jobs are disappearing in the service sector. You've got a premium on intellectual capital and technology, which incidentally is the basis of expertise that is heavily weighted towards the IC community. So I got some calls from some people before I had this meeting, and some of them were basically forced into being an IC. I talked to a few people that had been let go. There are people that I talked to that had chose this. But the bottom line is whether you were forced to do this or this is something that you chose, what this equals for you today is you are now in the right place at the right time. And there's a very good story here that we're going to talk about, but I want everyone to kind of let that sink in. So now workers are creating their own job security, and the mindset is contributing to more workers choosing the IC lifestyle. Then you bring in globalization. Customers across the globe demand constant innovation. They want newer, smarter, faster versions of what they had before. And the key to meeting this demand is what? It's people. Talented, skilled, experienced people. They're the lifeblood of an organization. But globalization is a huge factor in shaping the future of our workforce. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and some of the unique opportunities for those of you that are a bit more adventurous. So historically, technology has always embraced constant change and innovation in its business model, and many of you on the phone know that because you work in the technology sector. So technology-enabled solutions are really the right choice to keep up the pace. As a matter of fact, I came across this interesting study, and it talked about, it basically revealed that there's 26 million American workers 21 years or older who are not currently independent and are considering a shift to independence in the next 2 to 3 years. So the bottom line here is you're in good company. So all of these factors are really enabling and encouraging the use of ICs in the workforce, and it's making it easier to connect you to the clients and the companies that need your services. So now I think, Sarah, we have a poll coming up. We've certainly heard enough of me. I would love to hear from some of the folks on the phone.
Yeah. So we want to kind of make this interactive, so we've got some poll questions for you. The first one's up now. It says, how many U.S. workers rely on independent work for more than half of their income? So we have a choice of 17.9 million, 10 million, or 7.5 million. So we're going to open this up, and we'll just make a selection, and then we'll share the results. Okay, we'll keep it open for about 5 more seconds. People are coming in. Looks like the clear winner that's coming out that I can see, we're getting over half of you guys think it's the first one, 17.9 million. That's the winner. So we had 52% said 17.9 million, Terri.
Well, it just, just what I thought. The people on this phone are very smart. That is
yes.
the answer. A, B, and you're paying attention to the presentation because I snuck that in there. So it's my little way of making sure I'm not talking out into space, so that's great. So we're going to talk a little bit about technology, and really, I personally feel, and this is not a feeling, I mean, I've done research, but technology is really the driver behind some of these changes in the workforce and creating just massive opportunities for ICs. Never before has there been so many channels to connect ICs to the businesses that need them. So when you look at technology and some of the different options out there, online staffing platforms and freelance management systems, it's really growing as quickly as the growth of the IC population. And it's really enabling the connection between talent and the customers that need that talent. So online work platforms and freelance platforms have had explosive growth over the past 3 years. And in 2014, the spend was at $11 billion. It's expected to be at $46.5 billion in 2020. So with online work platforms and contingent talent and buyers establishing a marketplace and enabling a process of bidding and interaction through services that offer identity and profile management, skill searching, resume matching, ratings and references, payment terms and negotiations, this is just something that is very attractive to the companies that want to hire ICs. So technology is really connecting talent directly to the end user. There's less layers, and I can tell you my experience with multiple Fortune 100 and 500 clients, this is very attractive. They like the speed and the agility. And we're seeing IC talent being introduced into traditional contingent workforce programs as well. Some of those that are, primarily contingent workers managed by MSPs, we're seeing ICs introduced there. And another really interesting trend, and this is a huge disruptor, is you've got the staffing providers trying to mimic some of the speed and agility that we're seeing with some of these online staffing platforms, because with the staffing providers, you've got to go through resumes, and then you've got to vet, and then it takes weeks, and meanwhile the manager is trying to get his or her project off the ground. So they're really trying to kind of jump on that bus and see how they can mimic some of that speed and agility of connecting the talent directly to the organization. And the good news here, too, is that technology can enable risk mitigation as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that. MBO Partners provides compliance, engagement, payment, talent management, so there's also, options for technology to mitigate some of that. But the bottom line is that people and businesses can establish work arrangements from the original agreements and statements of work to depositing compensation in a bank account of a worker in any given country. So in this new normal, how do ICs market themselves? How do you get access to all of these opportunities, and how do you get the word out? So I got a call before this presentation, and I was told, I think his name is Felix, you might be on the phone to answer this question specifically, so I'm going to go off script and do this, but I think it's a really good question because I've personally experienced it, and I think some of you on the phone have. So he said, how would somebody who's a former executive, i.e. a VP, director, C-suite, who's had this very long career and decide to go out on their own and be an independent consultant, is that seen as a step down from a resume standpoint? Is that seen that, as something that is kind of a step away from, that level of skills and expertise? And I have an answer for that, and it's emphatic no. As a matter of fact, in this market, it's really about people going out and saying, I'm going to use all of my experience and everything that I've learned, and I'm going to go out on my own and make my own path and have interesting projects, that type of thing. So I want to answer you, Felix, and say absolutely not. It's not seen as a step down. It's seen as someone that is just taking advantage of a very different workforce. So all of these things we talked about, it adds up to a marketplace that's ripe with opportunities for ICs, and it's a solid option for the organizations that want to employ them. So when you look at this new normal of globalization, technology evolution, and explosive growth in the usage of ICs, how can ICs market themselves? Word of mouth and referrals is a very strong reference point. Ask for them when you leave an assignment. I was speaking to an independent consultant friend of mine the other day who provides organization design services, and she got a referral from a client she did work for a couple of years ago. So they loved her work. They recommended her to someone else they knew that needed her services. So this happened on its own, but asking current organizations for referrals is a more proactive step. It's a very powerful tool. People will hire you based on a trusted friend or advisor's recommendations. That is very powerful. Former employers are also a great source. Those that know your work and trust you are always a source. And for those of you that were laid off or fired, skip that employer and use another one. But people generally in the IC world have a very strong career track and performance record, and being fired or laid off is not a black mark on your record, by the way. it's also not uncommon. In fact, a friend of mine gave me a great quote. He's a highly successful multimillionaire. He has his own company. He's been fired before, and he said, if you haven't been fired at least once, you're not trying hard enough. And some would say that sometimes it's the best thing that ever happened to him. So I just want to make sure that everyone puts that in perspective. I got a couple of calls and some people talking to me about that. It's not really a big deal. Social media is considered important for reputation and branding and network building. 35% of independent workers report using social media in their business. Now, it's not necessarily found to directly generate work. I think the survey said only 2% listed it as their #1 source of work. But it's still very important for personal brand, or as they say, the sizzle with the steak. You know, it's important to get your name out, writing, blogging, if you can get published, if you could get speaking engagements, if it's more than 30 people in the room, you know, those are the kinds of things that will build your visibility and your credibility. LinkedIn is another great platform. I think people probably don't use it as powerfully as they could. But join groups online. If there are groups online that are in your space, i.e. if you write proposals and there's a group that is for tech writers and proposals, go in and jump in on those discussions and add your viewpoint. People say, oh, Bob Smith, I saw him writing about so-and-so. That was a really smart comment. And hey, you know what, I actually need, you know, a tech writer or whatever. They remember you. If you can get published, get some articles out there, because the search engines will pick them up. And you'd be surprised. I wrote an article about 3 months ago, and I don't know, I think 4 people read it or whatever it was, but then I was quoted on Twitter. I found it somewhere else. So I mean, those kinds of things are really valuable for building credibility and building your brand, and I just can't stress it enough. And not everybody is as comfortable with it, but it's once you get out there and you start doing it, it becomes a lot easier. Some of the online platforms, those are a good start for relatively young or inexperienced workers like Elance or Freelancer. They, in the survey, they scored a little low in terms of being a primary or secondary source for those that were full-time and more experienced. I think just 3% listed it as their #1 source. However, it's a great opportunity for Gen Ys or those that have been independent for less than a year. It's a great place to start and get your feet wet as you're seeking experience. And of course, it's a cliche, but network, network, network. You know, people hire who they know and who they trust.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's been massive and dramatic changes in the workforce landscape, which are creating a lot of opportunities for ICs. As a matter of fact, these changes have just pretty much turned the workforce on its ear. So it's creating a lot of opportunities for ICs and the organizations that hire them. It's also creating some scrutiny around how organizations engage temporary talent. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So, you know, briefly, we talked about the technology changes that integrate ICs into an organization's total workforce solution. Online staffing, freelance systems, they provide the process efficiency. The clients love the performance time because the time to fill is fast. The cost to fill is fast, which is very attractive. And also the freelance lifestyle is attractive to the workers engaged. You know, again, we talked about the control, flexibility, autonomy. Those are big factors. But we really can't talk about ICs without talking about a little bit of the black eye that the gig and IC economy is getting with the whole Uber lawsuit, or otherwise known as the Uber effect, and some organizations responding to that and changing how they engage workers. I will tell you, it is not slowing down the growth of ICs based on some of the stats that we're seeing, but at the same time, the state, federal, and other misclassification risks are only intensifying. So it's kind of the perfect storm. You've got the increased usage of ICs, and then you've got increased regulatory enforcement risks. And then all of this is kind of challenged by poor IC engagement practices. So again, it's not really going to slow down the usage of ICs, but what it is doing is it's creating momentum for reform and standardization of how this temp community is engaged. In fact, you can see here on the screen, some organizations are pushing back on these co-employment lawsuits and winning. Uber Belgium had a win, Google, and there are also, of course, workforce solution providers that can help organizations navigate some of these regulatory risks, you know, and set up some processes that mitigate the risk. And the reason that a company wants to do that is because you have access to some of the top talent in the industry. The only place that organizations are going to find some of this top talent, we'll talk a little bit about that too, is in the IC community. That's where they sit. So there are definitely options for managing some of this risk. So, what this means is just the legal and regulatory bodies will need to adapt, and organizations will need, they're going to need to be educated on how to properly engage ICs, contract language, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And another interesting thing, and I think that this is very telling, and I think this is also very, very good news for everyone on the phone, due to this increase in the gig economy, there's now talk of a third labor category. I can send it to anyone if they want to see it, but I saw a bit with economist Alan Kruger, who's very well respected, stating that there'll be a calling for a third labor category, and that this is really not about slowing down the usage of this type of talent, but the standardization of regulatory requirements, benefits, et cetera. So this is a very powerful statement from someone who's very well respected, saying, hey, ICs are here to stay. They're an important part of the workforce, and it's only going to grow. So on that note, again, I'd like to hear from some of the folks on the phone. I think, Sarah, we have another poll question, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we do. So this one says, for the ICs on this webinar, how many of you feel the recent Uber class action lawsuit will reduce future work and opportunities? So you have two choices. One is, yes, I think it will reduce future work opportunities, and then the other one is, no, I don't think there will be much impact on future work. So we'll let you guys interact with that. Now, I can tell you just at a glance, if this is coming in, most of you guys don't think this is going to be a problem for you in particular. So we're going to go, I think we can close it out. The majority said no, they don't think it's going to be an issue.
That's great. Well, I agree with you, 110%. I think you're in the right place at the right time, and this is just going to create reform, and that's always a good thing. The only thing you can count on is change, and there's certainly a lot of that. So what does this mean? This means that companies want to hire you. IC talent is critical to sustaining growth and profitability. So there's some really good news here. Particularly highly skilled workers in the IC community that are not found in other temp talent communities, they're a big benefit to organizations. Now, I've gotten some questions around, well, how can organizations attract the top talent that you often find in the IC community? Some of the things that they can do is provide a culture that's conducive to creativity, respect, value the work and intellectual capital that they bring to the table. It's also very important for organizations to have clearly defined processes in engaging ICs. I cannot stress this enough. I experienced this in my own previous history, trying to bring on ICs with overly aggressive or punitive processes. And I'll give you an example. Multiple approval levels or requiring excessive insurance, for example, requesting, and this is an actual real-life example, requesting a $5 million errors and emissions policy from an independent consultant that is providing support in a manufacturing environment where they won't have access to sensitive data, financial information. So it's really just looking at your processes and making sure that they're set up properly and they mitigate risk, but that they're not prohibitive to onboarding the talent that you need. Well, this is what makes ICs attractive to organizations. You get high quality talent, you get a very productive and seasoned workforce, and then it enables the organizations to change with fluctuations in demand and market conditions and bring in the talent they wouldn't otherwise have. So as we discussed earlier, globalization and technology forces are continuing to change how businesses can or must operate, and basically allowing them to compete and succeed in today's economy. So we talked a little bit about all of the different opportunities to connect ICs to the people that are looking for them, and we're now starting to see a lot of other avenues to connect someone to the independent consultant that they need to bring on board, and we're starting to see ICs introduced in traditional contingent workforce programs. So managed service providers, VMSs, we're starting to see them be used more in the contingent worker program populations. Over the past 15 years, information technology has begun to transform existing intermediaries into just providing functional control and looking at, stats, et cetera, to really looking at what is the right workforce solution, what is the right workforce mix, and bringing in the right resources that make sense. And then also to support direct arrangements between businesses and independent workers. It's ensuring that, a worker is engaged in a specific work arrangement and would be classified correctly. So there's a lot of processes in place now that were not there before. One of the important things to note is, bringing on ICs, it's important to establish a payer of record. I think that that's where most companies are comfortable. And it could be a payer of record under your own company. It could be an employee of record, an EOR, or an agent of record, AOR. But those are the types of things that make companies more comfortable in hiring you, because tax compliance is handled, the correct classification is there. And also some of these online work platform intermediaries, the digital online platforms, they're allowing businesses and workers to quickly and efficiently match with one another and to arrange some type of scope of work and facilitate payments. So they're also offering services to kind of talk about that. But it's just important that those components be involved in making sure that, companies feel comfortable using your services. So workforce landscape, mix of labor changing in IC's favor. So we talked a little bit about this, but the changes we've had in the past couple of years are just absolutely unprecedented. A recent survey conducted by research firm MBO Partners found that about 30% of a company's workforces are now made up of non-full-time employees, and it's expected to grow to 50% by 2020. Another interesting thing, the baby boomers, everyone loves to talk about the baby boomers leaving, and are they leaving, are they staying, what does that mean? So though the U.S. economy has been steadily improving in the past few years, baby boomers are not leaving their jobs in droves, but they are leaving, and they're leaving at a steady pace, and many organizations are not prepared for their absence and the knowledge that they're taking with them. The good news is the youngest baby boomer is turning 51 this year, and the average U.S. retirement age is 62. So we have some time to bridge the gap, but 10,000 baby boomers retire every day. Now this can actually create perfect conditions for ICs for a number of reasons. Number one, they need to have people to come in and kind of fill the gaps, the knowledge gap. And number two, something that's interesting, and I've seen this in different scientific studies and then my own personal study, people just calling me over the past week or so, but a lot of these boomers are doing encore careers in the IC community. And it's a viable option because they've got a ton of experience, they've got that business knowledge, and it's just another option and another opportunity to gain that knowledge back into the workforce by bringing in the ICs. So talking a little bit more about the workforce landscape and how it's impacting the usage of ICs and the opportunities of ICs. So with globalization of the workforce, the key is to have access to high quality talent, not just here, but across the globe. And as I spoke earlier, for those of you that are a bit more adventurous, this presents many unique opportunities for ICs, particularly those that are mobile. In fact, 54% of college graduates are coming from emerging markets outside of the U.S. I'll give you a specific example. This just happened. I was speaking with a friend of mine a couple of days ago. She's had a very lucrative career for 30 years in sales. She just sent her last child off to college and has decided to take an independent consulting gig in Belgium for a year. She's highly sought after because of her experience here stateside. She's considered very attractive, so she's going to head over there, and from what I gather, she's going to be making a pretty healthy salary. So again, there's lots of options here. For those of you that are a little bit adventurous, that's something you might want to talk about or think about. And if you'd like her number and you want to find out how it goes, I'll be happy to share that. The other thing we need to talk about is the talent war, and I'm really seeing some interesting things here. So we have a severe shortage in the STEM category. I'm sure those of you on the phone have heard of the STEM category and the shortages, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In the next 10 years, it's going to outpace non-STEM jobs significantly, growing 17% as compared with 9.8% for non-STEM. This is also very interesting. 60% of the new jobs that will be open in the 21st century will require skills possessed by only 20% of the current workforce. and it's estimated that the U.S. may be short as many as 3 million high-skilled workers by 2018. And according to the U.S. Department of Commerce, people in STEM fields can expect to earn 26% more money on average and be less likely to experience job loss. So for those of you currently operating in any of these categories, congratulations. You're going to have a very healthy career ahead of you. And for those organizations that are seeing shortages in their company and need this talent, again, you're going to see a lot of this in the IC community. So a large percentage of the talent pool that has the STEM skill sets does fit in the IC population by choice, and certainly must be considered when looking for talent in this area. So I think we have another poll question, because I don't want to be the only one talking.
Yes, I mean, this has been, by the way, we're getting so many great questions, and people are really just, you're really stimulating a lot of great conversation on the side. Just so you know, Terri, we're scrambling to get all the messages down.
That's the New York for me. I love that. Let's get into the juicy stuff.
Yeah, so we're capturing everybody's questions and we're gathering them. So just letting you guys know, we see them. So here's our next poll, and it's for the ICs in the audience. And it's about, do you regret your decision to go independent? You know, yes, I wish I were back to full-time employee workforce. No, but it can be difficult at times, but I don't regret it. Or, you know, I'm not really sure. I haven't really figured that out yet. And so we're looking at the polling coming in now. We'll give it a few more seconds. Looks like the majority is in the middle. You know, they're kind of saying, I don't necessarily regret it, but that doesn't mean it's always easy. You know, which is certainly what the experience that I hear from people all the time.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it really isn't for everyone, right? You know, and it presents some unique challenges. It also presents some unique rewards, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So how is this new normal in the world of work going to affect IC? So we talked about a lot of things, technology and globalization. You know, how is this really going to impact how we engage our workforce and the ICs that are in it? Well, you know, technology changes are really enabling the engagement of ICs across the globe. We didn't have these options. I think not even, God, don't quote me here, but I think even 8 or 10 years ago, or maybe earlier than that. And the world's becoming flatter. So we have ways to connect talent to the people that need them. The mere fact of an increasingly globalized economy necessitates, you know, that businesses large and small engage workforce capacity in different parts of the world. You know, you've got investment, production operations, and services following fast expanding, developing, and emerging sources and markets. So the workforce has got to be engaged in those locations to ensure that the needed work gets done, to ensure that that is done and businesses represented in an appropriately localized way to the markets, regulators, et cetera. So all of these changes create tremendous opportunities for ICs. And the explosive growth of ICs is forcing regulators and organizations to accommodate these changes and accommodate some of the risks that's been brought up by some of our politicians. I know that you've been following it, but the risks and all the concerns that have been brought up are actually just acting, rather than shutting it down and saying this is scary, don't use this talent, it's being used as a change agent to say, look, this population is here to stay, so we have to look at our regulations. We have to look at, you know, are we taking care of our workforce the way we need to? Do we maybe need to have hybrid where, you know, if you're an IC and you work for a company, they subsidize maybe benefits. So they're really saying we have to take a look at this. There has to be some standardization. But it's not going away. The average use of temp labor overall is 20% of the total workforce, and some are as high as 50%. So what is next for ICs in the world of work? Core takeaways. I certainly couldn't answer that question fully because who knows what the future holds, but you know, based on some of the research that I've done, it just makes good business sense to leverage ICs to accommodate some of these global changes and market fluctuations, as well as bring in key talent that often can only be found in the IC talent community. Technology is really driving the growth of opportunities, and some technology providers are providing risk management. I know that MBO Partners, this is one of the more attractive components of their services to clients, and other options as part of their service offering. So again, this technology is really making it very attractive and very easy for organizations to bring ICs into their workforce and help create bottom line growth. The Great Recession, we all know there's nothing great about it. They call it the Great Recession, but it created dramatic shifts in the workforce, and more workers are entering the IC market than ever before. And the good news is more employers want to hire them, particularly for some of the more challenging skill sets in STEM category and providing solutions for the talent gap. So globalization of the workforce is requiring top talent across the world, and those ICs that are mobile will have even greater opportunities, i.e., like my friend who's going to Belgium. Uber and some of the other class action suits, you know, we talked about this, they're really more creating opportunities and tightening controls in the nature of how organizations engage non-employees, changes in contractual language, and structure of the working relationship. It seems highly unlikely that the growth in ICs is going to slow down with these class action suits because, frankly, it's too profitable, it's too effective, and it's too appealing for the workers who chose this profession or perhaps were forced into it, and the organizations that leverage them. It could impact the nature of how organizations engage non-employees, and it could require maybe some changes in the structure of the working relationship. But you know, the bottom line is the surge of the gig economy it's really changing the way we look at the workforce, you know, regulate it and count it. And you know, based on just the feedback I got on the last poll, are you happy that you chose this profession, or perhaps some of you didn't choose it, it was just something you kind of fell into because you had to. You know, it isn't for everyone. It's unpredictable. For those of you that like a steady paycheck and benefits, it can be challenging. But the rewards are there, and the opportunities, unprecedented opportunities are there. If you know, work at your marketing and your branding and you keep a steady network, it can be a very rewarding time in your life. And it can present you with experiences and opportunities you otherwise would not have had. So that's pretty much all I have to say there. I want to thank you for your time. It was an honor and a privilege to get your time. I think at 100 plus an hour, that's a lot of revenue on the phone. So I really, yeah, that's a lot. So I appreciate it, and it was an honor and a privilege to speak with all of you today. And I think we'll just give it back to Sarah and start answering some of those questions.
I was going to say, don't you go anywhere because we have lots of questions for you.
Great.
And so I'm just going to, I'm trying to look at ones that point out. And I think I want to start, especially based on your experience with some of the companies that you worked for. We have someone asking, Nancy says, do you see in procurement and organizations adapting to independent consultants? Because she's saying oftentimes there are challenges getting paid as an independent. And I can tell you with the independents that I deal with, I just had someone who was literally delivering a PowerPoint presentation, and the company was a Fortune 100, and they wanted the same contract I would assume they would give to like a Malaysian manufacturing vendor. It was 70 pages long. It was a $10 million insurance policy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So for those of us who are feeling the pain now, do you really think they're getting it?
I think they're getting it slowly, and again, it's coming. Some people are coming out of it slower than others, out of that whole, it's all about mitigating risk and caution. I think the key is to have the right workforce solution partners to educate them. A lot of times if they're running their own programs and they don't have, frankly, someone like me or an MBO Partners or even like, a Pontoon or a Tapfin or someone out there that's educating them, they will continue to use these processes that frankly just no longer fit the new normal of where we are. So, I think that there's an opportunity for education here, and that's the role of the people they partner with.
So we've had a lot of people ask, thank you, that's kind of what we thought. It's like you can kind of tell those who are living in the trend or not, because we help them look through the contract. So I can tell you that right now.
And a lot of people are in that space. Some of these changes are very recent.
Yeah, exactly, and it takes those. I would say, in my experience, the bigger the company, the less adaptive you can expect it to be. They're going to send you things where they have these two categories. You're an established vendor with 30 years of business history or you're an employee. It's like, no, there's a whole middle part there that they're missing out on. So a lot of people have asked about, we've kind of danced around a little bit about marketplaces, and you mentioned Elance and Odesk. Do you know of any that are for kind of the emerging folks? Is there any? I know of a few for example, for more established people, like Zintro is one off the top of my head. That's a marketplace for subject matter experts. I know Spare Hire is some IT development. There's advisor networks. We've had a lot of people ask if there's any that you would recommend, or that aside from Elance and Odesk, for maybe people who are just a little bit more established, some marketplaces that you've interacted with or you know about.
And I think that's a tricky question, because I think I've heard of just 60 in the past year or so that have entered the market.
Yes,
so they're not exactly established. And that's the tricky part, is because there aren't any that are really truly established. This has only been around for a couple of years. But you know what? I think that being established, quote unquote, is not necessarily the way to go. There's some out there, Elevate Direct, that are gathering traction. They've got some really big clients. A few others, I could definitely think about it. I don't want to throw things out there, and if you want to email me afterwards. But some of the new ones may not necessarily be, you don't need to be concerned because they're not established, because some of them are a bit more progressive in the way that they're adapting to the workforce. So might be an option.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was more for established independent consultants. Like if you are senior but you need a place to start, some of the ones that might have more professional services rather than smaller break fix opportunities, things like that. And we can certainly think about a list for that. But Terry's right. There's a lot of them. It's kind of hard to know where to begin. So I had a good one here. In your opinion, realistically, with the way things are, do you see labor laws and regulations changing to be more IC friendly? There's just such a patchwork of all these different items. A lot of people are asking about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take like 100 years. I mean, I think the fact that they're even talking about it, they're talking about a third labor category, they're talking about some reform. I know that, there's been that whole ruling it was that one company in California, it was a manufacturing company, and they were all misclassified, and they wanted to kind of change how independents were viewed for the state of California. So we're definitely seeing some small changes and issues, but I think it's going to take a while for the regulations to come in. And, at the end of the day, it's really about control. So as long as organizations are very clear in how the worker manages their time and the control factors mostly on the worker side than the company side, I think that is going to be a good way to mitigate risk until they get all this straightened out, because it's from listening to the politicians, it's going to take forever. I mean, I'm not a labor lawyer, but so I'd be curious to kind of hear your thoughts, because you guys live and breathe this all the time.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. It's kind of like the laws are what they are right now, and they're definitely they were created, a lot of them, 1920s, 1930s. They don't really fit the model that we have now, and they're complex, and they can change not only from state to state, but between different localities within the state. And there's a lot of agreements to share information between across the agencies, and it's hard to navigate it correctly, and it's kind of a mess. So I think they know they need to do something about it, but I wouldn't hold my breath. That's kind of anecdotally. I will say that's my experience just in working with a lot of these companies and a lot of independents. I've got a great question from Bob. I thought that was, he said, what's the most valuable thing you learned in your pre-IC career that has been the most important in your life as an independent consultant?
Is that to me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I'm honored. So let me think. I guess the most important thing that I learned, I think it's that the one thing I found surprising is I have far more knowledge and experience than I thought I did. Because going out on your own and sharing things with different clients and them really being interested in what I've learned and what I've gained, I think sometimes people have a tendency to not really recognize or value the 20 or 30 years of experience that they do have. And I will tell you, it's very attractive to the companies that want to hire you. There's way more opportunities than there are people to fill them. So you have a lot more in your backpack than you think you do. That would be my humble opinion.
What do you think is best for an IC? This is kind of more of a tactical question, but I want to kind of get into some of the more tactical ones. Just because you've worked with a lot of these companies and they're your clients, do you think it's best for an IC, I guess this would depend, as I'm thinking about it out loud, to market themselves under their own name or their brand or their form of their corporate structure? Like, what do you think most resonates, especially some of these larger companies? Do you think they see
the
these
larger
people?
company? Yeah, it's a great question, yeah, it's really, the larger companies want to have as many layers between them and you as possible. So even if it's Bob Smith Inc. or Bob Smith LLC, I mean, you definitely want to have an LLC or an Inc. after your name. They're not so much concerned about names; they're more concerned about corporate structure. So you've got to have insurance, you've got to be incorporated or LLC, just so you know, there's a couple layers between you and them. That's really the key.
Okay, so making them kind of feel like you're established, you're set up, kind of easing the pain until your first impression is, okay, this guy's got some stuff, or the gal's got some stuff together, and they're not just coming to me as a sole P, that they've really invested.
You've got insurance and all of that, and there's a couple layers between you and them, and they don't have the risk.
Yes. Okay, there's so many questions. People are really interested in tapping you, and I'm just so we've had a couple people ask about what are these companies looking for in ICs, what skill sets are they typically hiring. I think that's kind of like what you're saying, more into the STEM categories, but is anything more specific that you've seen when engaging independent talent? What groups of people they're typically looking for? Like, is it IT, graphic, things like that?
Yeah, I think most of my experience has been on, the contingent workforce programs and MSP side, and a lot of the skills were specialized. So obviously in the STEM category, wherever there were shortages, they would bring in ICs. And interestingly enough, a lot of them were also retirees. They wanted to bring back in previous talent, and so I saw a lot of that as well. But anything that's a bit more like tech writers or something that you could find out in the community a bit more readily, they didn't use as much in the IC community. It's not to say that they didn't, it's just that, they either had them in-house or they would use, contractors.
Here's another one that's kind of drawing on your experience I really like, and this is from Megan. From your own experience, what advice can you give to people who are considering the leap to freelancing or consulting? So they haven't quite made up their mind yet, they're just considering it. Interesting.
Well, I'm honored you're asking these questions, and my knowledge of that one is limited, but I think it's you have a ton of experience and you have a lot to offer for clients. I think you just got to be prepared for that first 6 to 8 months where it's a little bit rocky and it takes a while to build up traction. But I can tell you there are far more people and far more opportunities that for you and people that want to hire you than you have time to fill. So it's absolutely worth it. Get yourself set up, start marketing yourself, and there's a ton of opportunity out there. I think the biggest thing is just, be prepared for the ebb and flow.
Yeah, we have a lot of people call us considering this, and we have some webinars and resources on this topic. It's really popular, and it really comes down to just kind of what you were saying earlier, Terri. It depends on what's right for you and how you enjoy working, and can you kind of swallow that risk and have 6 to 8 months of income saved up and kind of accept that you may not get paid for a while and that you're not going to get paid every 2 weeks and that you are going to have some additional risk, and can you sell yourself? Can you market yourself as an expert? Is it time for that leap? It's really, is it a good time in your personal life? If you have a brand new baby and you're going to have all these ends that you need to meet, may not be the best time. So kind of like your lifestyle stage, many things go into that factor, but it's not for everybody, and you kind of got to want it, because if it was that easy, everybody would do it. There's a little bit of grit you have to put in first, for sure. That's what we find with our folks.
Thank you. That was very helpful. You guys live and breathe this quite a bit.
Yeah.
I could not have said it better myself.
Yes. Let's see here. So we talked a little bit about what can independents do to be more attractive to clients to stand out from the crowd. So we talked about, that's from Robin. We talked about maybe naming themselves, including the, LLC and incorporated in their profile. But what else can make them more attractive? If I'm a hiring manager and I'm looking at a bunch of ICs, what's standing out for me? What are your clients telling you that they're looking for?
Well, I think, again, referrals are important. A lot of the ICs that I saw hired, in some of the programs I managed were brought in because somebody knew their work and insisted that, somebody working for that company knew about them, and the personal reference was all that was needed. So that's very powerful. The marketing and the branding and the credibility, again, just kind of elevating your profile. And also just, I can't stress it enough, but the risk mitigation. So just having your insurance in place, and when they ask for all that paperwork, it's just there and ready. But, a lot of it is just, as you build your network, people are going to know about you, and they're going to refer you, and a lot of times they'll want to bring you back for an assignment. I don't know, Sarah, if you can add anything to that.
No, I think that's really good. I think it's about positioning yourself and being, we call it being, Fortune 500 up and like ready and presentable. Like, you're not, when they ask you for things like your W-9, your articles of incorporation, your insurance, you're ready to go. You're not scrambling to find it. You have a website, even if it's on like a branded me or LinkedIn. Like if I Google you, I should be able to know quickly what you do and find a professional presence for you online. And like you said, if you have published articles, things like that, anything that's going to make me feel good, if I'm paying you and treating you like an expert, I want to kind of have that backed up just with the way your persona is and what your online persona is. It's just so important that we're finding for folks just over and over again. And just like you said, to be ready to not balk at, what do you mean liability insurance? And what do you mean W-9 form? Like,
I'll give
even
you
if you don't know, just pretend. And call us.
And go get it and go get the insurance. But I'll give you a personal example. I was working for a Fortune 100 client, and they wanted to hire this person who did, I don't know, he's like this mad scientist. His bill rate was $1,000 an hour, and he didn't have any of those things. He had a major attitude, and he was very difficult. And they just finally said, forget it. We'll find someone else. And I think there's only 3 people on the planet. So I can't stress enough. Be polite and be cooperative. It goes a long way in a lot of things.
Yeah. Some of those guys can. Some of the really, really tough ones, though, I also have seen the client just be like, "Wow, okay, I guess we just better give them what they want." If you're commanding $1,000 an hour, maybe you can do that, but anything else, don't. We'll close out with this because I think it's interesting to me and kind of shows the environment of all the different ways this is emerging. And I love to ask people this question, and Nancy asked this, but I feel like everyone gives a different answer. So I'd love to hear, Terri, what you find the difference between an IC versus a contractor versus a solopreneur versus an entrepreneur, and just kind of how do those things, what do they mean to you? And on just a quick anecdotally, like what's your definitions for the difference between some of those phrases that you're hearing everywhere?
Well, I think just at a high level, ICs are considered more project-based, specialized. You're coming in to like wave your magic wand or do whatever you need to do to kind of solve a problem. A contractor is someone that's brought in 40 hours a week, to kind of do time and materials and do something consistently. Solopreneur, and someone asked me this actually, frankly, I don't get the difference myself between solopreneur. So Sarah, that probably you could answer that question better than I, but that's kind of my high level.
Yeah, I think, well, that's why I like to ask that question. No, but that's why I like to ask that question, because I feel like a lot of these people are kind of coming up with these phrases and seeing what sticks to the wall. And so many times I'll have an idea in my head what a consultant means and what a freelancer means versus a contractor, and then I'll be negotiating a contract with a customer and we have a completely different idea. So I think you've got to, my advice would be, what's your audience? Who's talking to you about it? And what do they think it is? Especially if it's a client, and kind of getting that feel. If they call you a freelancer, just make sure, and you don't think of yourself that way, just make sure you guys are on the same page about the service you're providing and what level you're at and how you're representing yourself, because I really think to a certain extent it's a little bit subjective to the person who's interpreting that phrasing. So we have so many more questions, but we have to wrap it up. We're gonna do one last poll, and we've captured everybody's questions. We're gonna share them with Terri, and she'll get back to you. We're gonna email again a copy of within a week. We'll give you the slides and also a recording of the webinar. And this is just a quick poll that we have up. If you want my team to contact you, or if you want Terri to contact you, if you're just like, hey, I just came for the webinar, please don't contact me, no problem. Just let us know. We want to do what you want. And we just want to thank you. I just want to thank everyone for their great questions and all the participation that we got. Just really just makes it so much more fun to have it be interactive and to hear the things that you guys care about.
Wonderful. Thank you. It was an honor. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Terri, thanks so much for your time. It's really great to have an insight to folks who are working, especially for me too, because we talk to independent consultants all the time, and just to have someone who's worked for some of these big organizations kind of from the other side to kind of give us a glimpse into what they're looking at. This is a real treat, and definitely something that we really like to know, our advisors like to know, because we coach people on this kind of stuff every day.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm happy I could help.
All right, guys, I think we're going to close out the poll in the next, 5 seconds or so. We'll get it done. And we just want to thank you for attending, and we'll give you back, we gave them back 3 minutes, Terri, into their busy day.
Good. Good.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for attending.
Thanks,
we'll
everyone.
see you on the next one. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.